I never imagined I would become the kind of mother whose own daughter would leave her stranded outside a hospital with nothing but the clothes on her back. Yet there I was, 67-year-old Helena Marquez, standing near the glass entrance of Star Lake General Hospital in northern Winnipeg, watching my daughter Lena walk away with my handbag, my phone, and whatever belief I had left that she still cared about me. It had all begun that morning with what I foolishly believed was a heartfelt gesture. Lena had called me at my little apartment on Maplewood Street, sounding unusually bright, almost sweet. "Mom, I've arranged a wellness checkup for you at Star Lake General. Full package, my treat. I'll pick you up in an hour. It's time you took care of yourself." I should have known something was off. Lena hadn't taken me anywhere in years, not since she moved into her executive condo, started her high-pressure marketing job, and decided my crocheted sweaters and homemade advice didn't fit into her sleek, polished world. But I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe my daughter still saw me as someone worth caring for. The ride to the hospital should have been my first warning. Lena barely spoke. Her jaw was set tight, her nails tapping nervously on the steering wheel. When I asked about her partner, Maya, she only muttered, "busy," before staring out the window. We pulled up to the main patient drop-off zone. Cars bustled around us, ambulances, families visiting loved ones, nurses rushing in and out. "Just hop out here, Mom," Lena said. "I'll park and meet you inside at the admissions desk." I stepped out, clutching my jacket. Before I could even shut the door properly, she pulled away so fast the wind from her tires tugged at my hair. I told myself she was in a rush. Hospitals were always crowded on Fridays. But 20 minutes passed. Then 40. I stood by the admissions counter, like a confused visitor from another world, watching families support each other. Sons guiding elderly mothers, husbands checking in wives for appointments, daughters holding their father's hands. Finally, when I reached for my phone to call her, a hollow panic hit me. My phone wasn't in my coat pocket. My wallet wasn't either. Then I remembered Lena had offered to carry my handbag earlier so I wouldn't forget it. It had everything: my ID, my bank cards, the emergency cash I kept tucked into a corner pocket, even my apartment keys. The moment the truth settled in my chest, felt like a cold stone sinking into deep water. She didn't forget to come back. She never intended to. And as I stood alone in the sterile hum of the hospital entrance, I had no idea that the person who would approach me next would change the rest of my life in ways I never could have predicted, because the stranger who soon tapped my shoulder wasn't just offering help. She was offering a chance at a life I didn't know I needed. "Excuse me, ma'am?" The voice was gentle, raspy, like someone who had spent a lifetime speaking quietly, yet carrying authority. I turned and saw a woman in her late 70s standing a few feet away. She was dressed in a deep green wool coat, her silver hair pinned back with an elegant clasp. A carved wooden cane hung loosely from her wrist. She examined me with sharp, perceptive eyes that didn't just look at me, but seemed to look through me. "You've been standing here for quite some time," she said. "Are you all right?" I wanted to answer with the usual polite lie, "I'm fine," but my throat tightened. "No," I whispered. "I don't think I am." "May I stand with you?" she asked. I nodded, unable to trust my voice. She stepped closer, leaning slightly on her cane. "Waiting for someone?" "My daughter," I said, "but she's not coming back." The woman's expression didn't shift into pity the way others might. Instead, it was a steady understanding, as though she had already pieced together the truth. "And you have no way to get home," she added quietly. "No phone, no wallet, nothing." I swallowed hard. She took them. Everything. The woman tilted her head, regarding me with unnerving calm. "What is your name?" "Helena. Helena," she repeated softly. "My name is Dr. Ramona Vale. I've just finished visiting a colleague upstairs. My driver should arrive shortly." I managed a tight nod, unsure what else to say. She paused for a moment, then continued in a tone that made my heart thump strangely. "I'd like to propose something unusual." I stiffened, instinctively wary. "This isn't charity," she assured me. It's a mutual exchange. Ramona lifted her chin slightly, her gaze unwavering. I need someone to accompany me to my home in Rivermarch Heights. Someone to pretend, just for one evening, that you're my daughter, returned after years apart. My breath caught. What? Why would you? Because the people in my life see only my wealth, not me. I want to observe their intentions before finalizing certain legal matters. She sighed. You have an honest face, Helena. And right now you need help, and I need someone with no reason to deceive me. A sleek charcoal sedan stopped at the curb. The driver stepped out and opened the rear door. Ramona lightly touched my arm. You may say no, she said softly. Walk away, and I'll respect it. Or you may come with me, and leave today far better than it began. My heart hammered, fear and exhaustion colliding with something else I hadn't felt in years. The sensation of being chosen. I looked at the car door waiting open, and I stepped toward it. But stepping into that car wasn't the strange part. The strange part was realizing Ramona already knew much more about me than she was letting on. The drive to Rivermarch Heights felt like drifting into a world built for someone else. Someone who belonged to polished things, soft lighting, and quiet wealth. I sat beside Ramona in the back of the sedan, my hands folded tightly in my lap, trying not to look like a woman who had been abandoned outside a hospital by her own flesh and blood. Ramona, meanwhile, seemed perfectly at ease. She gazed out the window as if this entire situation, picking up a stranger, inviting her home, asking her to pretend to be her daughter, were nothing more than an afternoon errand. Only once did she glance at me. You're trembling, she observed. I forced a shaky exhale. I don't understand why you chose me. Ramona gave a faint smile. Because you didn't ask for anything, not even when you were desperate. People reveal their true nature when they think no one is watching. The sedan turned onto a wide, tree-lined street brimming with old stone houses and sweeping lawns. Rivermarch Heights, the kind of neighborhood I used to see only while passing by on buses. When the car pulled into Ramona's driveway, I felt my breath hitch. Her home was a sprawling, ivy-covered manor with copper window frames, lantern sconces, and a courtyard fountain shaped like an open lotus. An iron gate closed behind us with a quiet chime. Welcome home, Ramona said softly. The phrase felt strange on my ears, warm, foreign, dangerous. Inside, the foyer opened like something out of a classical painting. Marble floors, framed botanical sketches, a grand staircase curving upward like a ribbon. The air smelled faintly of lavender and clean paper. A woman in her late 50s, sharp-eyed and impeccably dressed in navy linen, stepped out from the hall. She froze when she saw me. Dr. Vale, you didn't mention, is this? Ramona's voice was elegantly calm. Marisol, this is Helena. Marisol blinked rapidly, her posture straightening. Your daughter? Her tone made it clear she already doubted it. Yes, Ramona said. She's come home. Marisol didn't even try to hide her surprise, or her irritation. Well, she murmured stiffly, I suppose I'll prepare the dining parlor then. As she disappeared, Ramona leaned close to me. Marisol has her own expectations regarding my estate, as do others. Her voice dropped. Tonight will reveal much. My stomach twisted. Who else is coming? My estate manager, she said simply, and someone who has taken liberties in assuming they will inherit far more than they deserve. I swallowed. And what do I do? Just be, Ramona answered. Be present. Call me mother once or twice. Let them wonder. She touched my hand, reassuring but firm. And Helena, she added quietly, no matter what happens tonight, stay beside me. Because the moment the dinner guests arrived, I realized I had stepped into a hidden battlefield I wasn't prepared for. The dining parlor looked like it belonged in some historic estate. Dark walnut panels, tall arched windows, and a table long enough to seat 12, though Ramona had set only 4 places. My stomach tightened as I took in the polished silverware and crystal glasses. I wasn't used to rooms like this. I wasn't used to pretending to belong. Ramona, however, moved with ease, her cane tapping softly on the floor. As she took her seat at the head of the table, I sat to her right, exactly where she'd instructed. My heart thudded with every passing second. Then the first guest arrived. A slim man in a charcoal suit stepped into the room, carrying a leather folio under his arm. His eyes were sharp, calculating. Dr. Vale, he greeted with a curt nod. Marisol said you had an urgent change to discuss regarding your asset restructuring. Yes, Dorian, Ramona replied smoothly. But first, meet my daughter, Helena. His head snapped toward me. Expressionless, but I could feel the flicker behind his eyes. Surprise, annoyance, curiosity. I wasn't aware you had a daughter, he said evenly. That is because I chose not to make her a topic of conversation, Ramona answered, lifting her chin with regal calm. Until now. Dorian studied me long enough to make my palms sweat. Before he could ask anything more, the second guest arrived. This one, far less composed. A young woman strode in with crisp heels and a stormy expression. Her sleek black hair was knotted into a high twist, and her lips were pressed tightly together. Mother, she said flatly. My eyes widened. Mother? Ramona exhaled. Helena, this is Evelyn Vale, my niece. Evelyn shot me a look that could carve ice. Your daughter, she repeated slowly. Interesting, considering you never once mentioned her existence. She has been out of the country, Ramona said, and has finally returned. I could practically hear Evelyn's thoughts. Returned for what? The inheritance? The power? The property? Her jaw tightened. Dinner began in tense silence. Marisol served roasted root vegetables and herb chicken, but no one touched their plates at first. So, Evelyn said suddenly, her fork tapping her plate like a warning. Helena, tell us about your upbringing. Where exactly were you raised? I froze. Ramona answered before I could stumble. Evelyn, not tonight. This dinner is not an interrogation. But Dorian leaned forward. Actually, I must echo Evelyn's question. Dr. Vale, you understand that sudden heirs complicate long-standing estate arrangements. Dorian, Ramona said sharply, you'll speak when spoken to. He backed down, but only slightly. Evelyn's eyes narrowed. Mother, if you're making changes to the legacy documents, I have every right to. No, Ramona interrupted, voice like steel. You have the right to dinner, nothing more. The room grew cold with tension, and I felt panic rising in my chest, until Ramona's hand settled gently over mine under the table. Stay quiet, she whispered. Observe. Everything will reveal itself soon. And she was right, because the truth that surfaced next would pull me even deeper into Ramona's world and her secrets. The tension in the dining parlor felt so thick it could have been ladled onto a plate. Evelyn's eyes kept darting between me and Ramona, like she was trying to solve an equation whose answer offended her. Dorian sat stiffly, fingers resting on his closed folio, as though he were moments from springing it open for battle. Ramona, however, remained calm, eerily calm. She lifted her glass, took a slow sip, and dabbed the corner of her mouth with a linen napkin before speaking. I know you both have questions, she said, her voice smooth but edged with command. And you will have your answers, but in due time. That time should be now, Evelyn muttered. Ramona's head tilted ever so slightly. No, my dear. Now is for dinner, and for meeting Helena properly. You'll have time later to unravel your suspicions. I swallowed hard. The chicken on my plate grew cold and untouched. Nothing in my life, absolutely nothing, had trained me for this kind of evening. Dorian broke the silence first. Dr. Vale, I must remind you that additions to your estate beneficiaries must be disclosed to your management team. This is not the time, Ramona interrupted. It is exactly the time, Evelyn snapped, leaning forward with a glare that could blister paint. A mysterious daughter shows up the same week you delay finalizing your asset revisions? You expect us not to question that? Ramona sighed as if speaking to two unruly children. Helena, she said gently, turning to me, would you mind passing the salt? Her tone was so normal that for a moment, the room paused. I handed her the salt with trembling fingers. Thank you, darling. Darling. The word hit Evelyn like a slap. Her eyes blazed as she turned toward me. You're enjoying this, aren't you? She hissed, her voice low enough that only those close could hear. Walking in here with no history, no explanation, and acting like you belong. My chest tightened. I opened my mouth, unsure what would come out, but Ramona spoke first. Enough, Evelyn. Her voice echoed sharply. Evelyn's nostrils flared. I won't sit here and pretend this isn't bizarre. And yet, Ramona replied coolly, you will sit here. The room went silent again. Finally, Dorian cleared his throat. Dr. Vale, you've always been forthright with us. If Helena is to be included in your future decisions, we simply ask for clarification. Ramona's spoon hovered above her plate. When she finally set it down, her expression shifted, no longer stern, but shadowed by something older, heavier. I will explain everything, she said softly, but not to ease your anxieties, to honor my own truth. She looked at me then, and something in her gaze made my breath catch, like she was weighing whether to reveal a secret she'd carried too long. Evelyn leaned forward, eyes sharp. What truth? She demanded. Ramona inhaled deeply. A truth about why I needed Helena tonight. She closed her eyes briefly, gathering herself. And the truth about the daughter I lost. The room froze. Evelyn paled. Dorian stiffened. And I felt the air shift. Something monumental was coming, but nothing could have prepared me for the revelation Ramona was about to share, or how closely it connected to my own past. For a long moment, no one spoke. Even the soft hum of the chandelier seemed to fade as Ramona rested both hands on her cane, her knuckles paling with the pressure. Evelyn stared at her aunt. No, at her second mother figure, as though the world had tilted under her chair. The daughter you lost? Evelyn repeated, barely audible. Ramona lifted her eyes. They shimmered, not with weakness, but with something raw and buried deep. My daughter, Adrielle, she said quietly. She would have been 40 this year. The room felt suddenly colder. I felt myself instinctively lean back, unsure whether I should be hearing any of this. Evelyn blinked rapidly. I didn't know you had a child. You weren't meant to, Ramona replied. It was long before your mother and I grew close, before I became the woman you know. A silence layered itself over us, heavy and thick. I was a young medical student when I had her, Ramona continued. Adrielle came at the worst time, too early, too fragile, with a heart condition the doctors didn't think she'd survive. The way she spoke, measured, careful, felt like she was reopening wounds she'd stitched shut decades ago. She lived only 4 months, Ramona whispered, but those months were the brightest part of my life. Evelyn's face softened for the first time all evening. Odd, Ramona, I had no idea. You weren't supposed to, Ramona repeated gently. Losing her changed me. After that, I never tried again. And over the years, people stopped asking. It became easier to let the world assume I was simply married to my work. She turned toward me then, but when I saw Helena outside that hospital today, her voice cracked, just slightly. She looked exactly how I once felt, abandoned by the world, unseen, unprotected. My breath hitched. I hadn't expected that. Not at all. I didn't choose her because she resembles Adrielle, Ramona added, but because something in her spirit reminded me of what I lost, and what I still longed for. Evelyn glanced between us, confused. So you brought her here? To replace your daughter? No, Ramona said firmly. No one can replace her. But I wanted to see what it felt like to offer care again, to offer safety, to offer a place to belong, even for one evening. She looked directly at me, and Helena, whether you believe it or not, the moment you agreed to enter that car, you gave me something I hadn't felt in decades. Dorian cleared his throat, discomfort flickering across his face. Dr. Vale, if this is all emotional reasoning, I must advise against making. Ramona raised her hand sharply. Dorian, not another word. Evelyn leaned back, stunned. So what happens now? Ramona exhaled slowly, her gaze still on me. Now, she said. Helena stays here for the night. My heart jolted. What? I need you to, Ramona whispered. Please. But I didn't know yet that staying one night in Ramona's house would unravel far deeper secrets, ones neither of us were prepared to face. I don't understand, I said softly. Why do you need me to stay? Ramona's eyes didn't waver. Because tonight is not finished. Not in the way you think. And I cannot face what's coming alone. Her words tightened something deep inside my chest. Dorian and Evelyn exchanged sharp glances, clearly unsettled by Ramona's tone. Evelyn crossed her arms. Aunt Ramona, this is absurd. You barely know this woman. Ramona looked at her niece, sadly, almost tenderly. Sometimes, Evelyn, it takes only minutes to recognize something in a person that others miss for years. Evelyn bristled. Dorian cleared his throat. If there's more to discuss, Dr. Vale, perhaps we should continue privately. Estate matters aren't meant. For tonight, Ramona cut in. My estate is not the subject. That shut him up. Marisol appeared in the doorway just then, her expression tight. Dr. Vale, your evening tea has been prepared. Shall I bring it here or to the East Parlor? The East Parlor, Ramona replied. Helena will join me. It wasn't a request. Evelyn's jaw dropped. You're bringing her into the East Parlor? That room is mine, Ramona said evenly, and I may bring whomever I choose. Marisol gave me a small nod, one that told me she wasn't against my presence, but she was warily evaluating what it meant. When Ramona rose from her chair, she swayed. Only slightly, but enough for me to notice. I rushed to her side without thinking, steadying her arm. Thank you, my dear, she whispered. As we walked toward the East Parlor, I felt Evelyn's glare drilling into my back, but Ramona leaned gently against me, guiding me into a room I hadn't yet seen. The East Parlor was breathtaking. Worn, lantern-like lamps glowing against deep green wallpaper, antique bookshelves lining the walls, and a wide bay window overlooking a moonlit garden. A fire crackled softly in the stone hearth, filling the room with golden light. Ramona settled onto a velvet sofa with an exhausted sigh. Helena, she said quietly, I haven't been truthful about one thing. Pulse quickened. About what? She looked toward the window, as though gathering courage from the night sky itself. When I saw you today, she began slowly. I wasn't surprised. I froze. What do you mean? Ramona turned her head toward me. Her eyes glistened, not with shock or regret, but with something hauntingly deliberate. I already knew who you were. A chill scraped down my spine. She continued, voice low and steady. I've known your name for 15 years. I've known where you lived. I've known what happened to you, and to the child you lost. My breath caught. Hard. How? I whispered. Why? What are you talking about? Ramona reached for my hand, her grip surprisingly strong. Because, Helena, the past you thought was buried didn't begin with you. Her next words struck me like a blow. It began with Adrielle, Rahuk. And in that moment I understood. Ramona's interest in me wasn't chance. It was history coming back for both of us. For a moment, the room seemed to tilt, the soft crackle of the fire fading into a distant hum. I stared at Ramona, her lined face illuminated by the glow of the hearth, her expression unwavering, like she'd been waiting years to speak the words she'd just said. What does Adrielle have to do with me? I managed, barely above a whisper. Ramona exhaled, slow, careful, almost painful. More than you realize. She reached for a folder, tucked behind a stack of books on the coffee table. It looked old, worn around the edges. When she placed it in my hands, my breath caught. My name, Helena Marquez, was written across the front in neat, faded pen. How do you have this? I asked, voice trembling. I kept it, she said softly. All these years. I opened it slowly. Medical notes, social worker reports, a newspaper clipping I hadn't seen in over a decade. A sinking, burning ache filled my throat. These are records from when I stopped. I couldn't say the words. Not out loud. Not about something I'd tried so hard to bury. Ramona nodded gently. From the year you lost your child. I swallowed hard. The world blurred. How did you even know? I whispered. Because I was one of the senior physicians overseeing that program, Ramona said. The neonatal crisis support unit. I wasn't your assigned doctor, but I followed your case. Why? My voice cracked. Why would you follow me? Ramona clasped her hands tightly on her lap. Her next words came slowly, each one like a weight dropping into the room. Because your case mirrored something I thought I escaped, but never truly did. I blinked through the sting in my eyes. Adrielle's heart condition. She nodded. Yes, but not just that. The circumstances, the lack of support, the way you were left alone to navigate something no mother should face alone. Her voice trembled for the first time. I saw you sitting in that hospital corridor back then, and you looked exactly how I must have looked at your age. You saw me back then? I whispered. More than once. She swallowed. I wanted to help you then, but by the time I tried, you disappeared, moved apartments, changed numbers. You closed yourself off entirely. I looked down at the folder, my past staring back at me with cruel clarity. You didn't lose your child because of medical failure, Helena, Ramona said softly. You lost her because the system failed you. And I was part of that system. A tremor ran through her voice. I've lived with that guilt for 15 years. Silence enveloped us, thick, suffocating. Why tell me now? I finally asked, barely breathing. Ramona's answer chilled me. Because the past we share is not finished. There are things you were never told, things that were withheld from you. She leaned forward, eyes glimmering with a guarded truth. And tomorrow, someone is coming to this house who knows the entire story. But Helena, she whispered, you may not be ready to hear what they're about to reveal. I barely slept that night. The folder Ramona had given me lay open on the bedside table of the guest room, its pages like ghosts whispering through the dark. Every time I closed my eyes, memories I'd spent years forcing into silence pushed their way back. Hospital lights, unanswered questions, the cold weight of grief that never truly left. By morning, my nerves felt frayed. When I stepped downstairs, the house was unusually still. Marisol hovered in the hallway, smoothing invisible wrinkles from her apron. She looked up sharply when she saw me. She's in the garden, Marisol said quietly. She barely touched her breakfast. I nodded and walked through the glass doors into Ramona's sprawling back garden. The air was crisp, early sunlight stretching over the hydrangeas and stone pathways like a welcome I didn't feel ready to accept. Ramona sat on a wrought iron bench beneath a willow tree, her cane resting beside her. She didn't turn when she heard my footsteps. You didn't sleep, she murmured. Neither did you, I replied gently. She released a small breath. No, there are things I've waited years to confront. And the person coming today, she was part of it all. I sat beside her. Who is she? Ramona hesitated, just long enough to make my skin prickle. Her name is Dr. Mara Ellington, she said finally. She was the lead physician in the neonatal program during the year you were admitted. The name hit me like a forgotten echo, faint but familiar. I recall her, I whispered. She was the one who told me my daughter wouldn't make it. Ramona nodded. She should not have been the one to tell you. It wasn't her case. She overstepped. She interfered in far too many files. Something in her tone sharpened the edge of my fear. I don't understand, I said. Why would she overstep? Ramona folded her hands, her expression tightening. Mara was ambitious, dangerously so. She believed certain medical decisions gave her the authority to choose which infants received extended care support, and which did not. My breath hitched. You're saying she decided? Ramona looked at me then, her eyes full of grief and something darker. I found out too late that she had flagged your case as non-salvageable before the full diagnostic review was complete. Your daughter deserved further evaluation, but Mara rushed it. She pushed for a conclusion that fit her numbers, not the truth. My heartbeat pounded in my ears. You mean my daughter might have? Ramona raised a trembling hand. I don't know. Not fully. That's why she's coming today. She agreed to talk, finally, after all these years. The garden felt suddenly colder. What if she refuses to tell the truth? I whispered. Ramona's lips pressed into a thin line. She will talk, she said softly, because she knows I'm dying. The words landed like a blow. I stared at her, stunned. Ramona, what do you mean, dying? She lowered her gaze. I'm not as strong as I've pretended. My time is limited, Helena. And before I could react, Marisol stepped out onto the veranda and announced with trembling urgency, Dr. Ellington has arrived. Dr. Mara Ellington stood in the doorway of the east parlor like a shadow made of steel. Tall, sharp-boned, her hair pulled into an immaculate twist, streaked with silver. She carried no bag, no folder, nothing that suggested vulnerability. Her presence alone felt deliberate, almost surgical. "Ramona," she said, offering a curt tilt of her head. "You look diminished." Ramona didn't flinch. "Illness has a way of stripping pretenses, Mara. Something you never allowed yourself." Mara's gaze drifted to me next. Not a hint of surprise crossed her face. "You must be Helena Marquez," she said matter-of-factly. "I wondered if Ramona would drag you into this." Something hot tightened in my chest. Drag me. I was the one who lost a daughter. Her eyes flicked, uninterested. So did thousands of women in that wing. Pain isn't proprietary. Ramona's cane tapped against the floor. Once, sharply. Enough. Mara remained unfazed. She sat in the armchair opposite us, crossing her legs with clinical precision. "I was told you wanted to discuss an old file," she said. "One I doubt you even have clearance to access anymore." Ramona's jaw hardened. "I kept Helena's record. You know that." A shadow passed over Mara's expression, subtle but unmistakable. "Of course you did." I clutched the folder beside me. "I need answers," I said. "Real ones. Not the rushed explanation you gave me 15 years ago." Mara leaned back, her face annoyingly placid. "Your daughter was born with cardiac atresia compounded by bilateral pulmonary restrictions. The combination was fatal. There was nothing we could do." "That's not what Ramona believes," I shot back. Mara's lips twitched. Not quite a smile, closer to irritation. Ramona always saw possibilities where protocols demanded realism. Ramona steadied herself, voice low but firm. "Possibilities matter when a life is involved." Mara exhaled sharply, as though bored. "You wanted efficiency, Ramona. The board wanted efficiency. I delivered it. High survival rates. Reduced expenditure. Results." My stomach twisted. "Are you saying my daughter was a number to you?" "A decision," Mara corrected coldly. "A projection. A resource distribution call. The unit didn't have capacity for prolonged, non-viable cases, and yours, statistically, was non-viable." I felt something inside me snap. "You didn't even let me hold her," I said, voice trembling. "You walked in with your clipboard and told me her heart was too weak. Then you disappeared." Mara's eyes finally hardened, the veneer cracking. "Because if I let mothers hold dying infants, no one would ever let go. And I had an entire ward to run." Ramona's voice cut through the air, like glass breaking. "Tell her the rest," she demanded. Mara's jaw tensed. "There is no rest." "Liar," Ramona whispered. Mara's stare sharpened. "Ramona, don't start this." "Tell her," Ramona repeated, "about the intervention request I submitted. The one you hid." My breath stopped. Mara didn't speak. She didn't blink. She only tightened her grip on the armrest until her knuckles whitened. Rehook. And in that silence, I realized the truth wasn't just cruel. It was intentional. Mara's silence said more than any confession could. She stared ahead, jaw tight, the faintest flicker of panic surfacing before she masked it beneath clinical detachment. Ramona leaned forward, her weakened voice gaining strength through sheer will. "I submitted an intervention request for Helena's daughter, a second cardiac evaluation, a surgical consult, a palliative alternative that could have given her more time, maybe days, maybe weeks, maybe more." She turned her gaze on Mara. "And you buried it." A surge of heat shot through me. "You what?" Mara didn't look at me. She only adjusted her posture, pushing her spine straighter as though preparing for a verdict. "It was not medically justified," she said coolly. "The request was irrational." "Irrational?" My voice cracked. "To try? To not give up immediately?" Mara's gaze finally met mine. Flat, sharp, unyielding. "To preserve resources for cases that had actual viability, yes. That was rational." My hands shook. "You stole my decision. You stole my chance to choose." Ramona's cane tapped sharply in anger. "You stole my ability to intervene." Mara's expression soured. "Your emotions compromised your judgment, Ramona. You formed attachments. You were becoming unpredictable. Someone had to keep the unit stable. And so you made yourself judge," Ramona whispered. "Jury and executioner." Silence fell again, thick enough to choke on. I felt myself trembling uncontrollably. My daughter, would she have lived? Mara inhaled slowly, weighing her answer like it had monetary value. No, she would not have lived. The coldness in her certainty made my stomach twist. But she might have lived longer, Ramona said, her voice fragile. She might have been held, loved, given moments that mattered. Mara's jaw tightened. Medicine is not poetry, Ramona. It is not a canvas for sentimental fantasies. We act to preserve the greatest good. You know that. I felt something inside me snap. You never even saw me, I whispered. Not once. I was just another tired woman in a hospital robe. Someone you could dismiss because she didn't fit your idea of worth. Mara didn't argue. That somehow made it worse. Why come now? I demanded. Why agree to speak after 15 years? Mara hesitated. Only a fraction, but enough. Because Ramona insisted, she said at last. And because she made it clear she didn't have long left. My chest tightened painfully. Ramona stared at the floor. It was my last chance to tell the truth, Mara admitted, her tone flattening. Or the portion of it that matters. The portion? I repeated. What else aren't you saying? Mara shifted in her seat, for the first time showing genuine discomfort. Her gaze flicked toward Ramona, accusatory, cornered. There were other documents, she began slowly, on your case, and one of them you are not prepared to see. My pulse thundered. What document? I asked. Mara looked directly at me, her expression chillingly calm. The one that proves your daughter did not die in the way you were told. Rehook. And before I could breathe, Mara stood and said, if you truly want the truth, you'll need to hear what happened after you left the ward. For a moment, everything in the room stilled, like the house itself was holding its breath. Mara's words, your daughter did not die in the way you were told, echoed inside me, each repetition heavier than the last. I felt my throat tighten. Explain, I demanded, my voice thin but trembling with force. Mara didn't sit back down. She remained standing, arms crossed, as if creating distance was the only way she could continue. When your child went into cardiac arrest, she began, you were sedated for your own safety. I froze. No, I whispered. I remember being awake. You remember fragments, Mara corrected sharply. But you were given a sedative shortly after the initial crisis. It was intended to calm you, to prevent shock. I shook my head, refusing to absorb her words. I never agreed to that. You were in no condition to agree, Mara replied. You were hysterical. You were in danger of collapsing. You were human, I snapped. I was human. Ramona lifted a trembling hand, signaling Mara to continue. Mara exhaled lightly. While you were unconscious, another review team is brought in. A transfer was proposed. My breath stalled. A transfer? To where? A separate cardiac unit in Southridge, she said. One that specialized in extended neonatal care. They believed your daughter might respond to a different intervention. My world spun. No one told me. No one even hinted. That was the problem, Ramona murmured bitterly. They weren't supposed to intervene without consulting the primary physician. Mara stiffened. Your primary physician was unavailable, Ramona. There was chaos. Tell her the truth. Ramona cut in. Mara's eyes hardened. Fine. She looked at me. The truth is, I blocked the transfer. I felt the air leave my lungs. You blocked it? I whispered, the words nearly dissolving. You mean, you stopped my daughter from going to a unit where she might have lived minutes or hours, that I could have held her. It wasn't viable, Mara insisted, though her voice shook now. The ambulance team refused to risk a transport without stability indicators, and I decided that stabilizing her would cause more suffering. Her vitals were too fragile. You decided, I repeated. You decided that, for me. For the unit, Mara corrected, her tone fraying. I followed the guidelines placed on me. Ramona's cane struck the floor, a sharp crack. You followed your ambition, Mara, not protocol. Mara closed her eyes briefly, then reopened them, colder. You want the truth, she said. The complete truth? Neither Ramona nor I spoke. Mara's voice softened to an unnerving calm. When Helena's daughter passed, there was an additional document, a request I submitted. What kind of request? I breathed. Mara hesitated. For the first time, truly hesitated. A post-mortem analysis, she said. My heart lurched. You examined her without my consent? Mara didn't look away, because something in her blood work didn't add up. The floor beneath me felt like it was shifting. What didn't add up? I asked. Barely daring to breathe, Mara's jaw clenched. She had markers, genetic markers, that matched a case from 2 decades earlier. She glanced toward Ramona, eyes narrowing. Markers from a line connected to your family, Ramona. Everything inside me froze. What are you saying? I whispered. Mara looked right at me. I'm saying your daughter was not just a random medical tragedy. She was tied to a hereditary defect that began before you were ever born. She paused, then delivered the final blow. And it traces back to someone Ramona knew intimately. In that instant, I realized the secret wasn't just medical. It was personal, buried, and dangerous. For several seconds, no one spoke. The world narrowed into the space between Mara's words and the thundering of my heartbeat. I stared at her, unable to process the enormity of what she'd just revealed. Someone Ramona knew intimately? I repeated, barely recognizing my own voice. Who? Mara didn't answer immediately. Instead, she straightened her posture, as if bracing herself for impact. Ramona's face had gone pale, paler than I'd ever seen her. Her fingers tightened around her cane, the small tremor in her hand betraying a truth she couldn't yet speak. Mara, she said quietly, don't twist this into something cruel. The facts are cruel on their own, Mara replied. My pulse quickened. Tell me, I insisted. No more half-truths. No more hiding. Mara exhaled through her nose. The genetic markers in your daughter's blood weren't random. They matched abnormalities recorded in a research file, one tied to a man Ramona had a relationship with many years ago. My breath hitched. I turned sharply to Ramona. A relationship? I asked. What does that have to do with me? Ramona looked at me, her eyes heavy with something far deeper than guilt. Helena, she whispered, I never told you because I didn't think it was relevant, or fair, or even possible, not after all these years. My chest tightened. Relevant to what? She closed her eyes, pain crossing her face like a shadow. Your biological father, she said softly. I knew him. The rune swayed. What? Mara stepped forward, voice clinical, but waited. Your mother was in the Southridge Community Program the year she became pregnant. The same year Ramona's former partner, Dr. Elias Varon, conducted research trials on congenital cardiac defects. I shook my head violently. No. My mother never mentioned him. She said my father left before I was born. He did, Ramona said. He left all of us. Her voice cracked. I didn't know your mother personally, she continued, but I knew Elias. I knew the cases he worked with. And when I saw your daughter's results, I recognized the markers immediately. My hands trembled uncontrollably. You're saying my daughter died because of some genetic flaw passed through my father? Ramona nodded, tears gathering in her eyes. And you knew him? I loved him, she whispered. Before I knew what he truly was, Mara interjected sharply. Elias documented several families he tested, quietly, unethically. Ramona discovered the truth too late. My breath grew shallow. So my daughter, my little girl, was part of a pattern he created? No, Ramona said urgently, reaching for my hand. She was a life, a precious life. What he did was monstrous, but it does not define her, or you. But I was hardly listening. Everything blurred. The walls, the firelight, the sound of my own breathing. Ramona's voice broke through faintly. Helena, please look at me. I did. Elias Varon was my daughter Adrielle's father too. The entire world stopped, and in that breathless silence, I realized Ramona and I were bound, not just by loss, but by bloodlines twisted together long before either of us knew. My breath refused to settle. Every inhale felt sharp, every exhale unfinished. Ramona's confession hung between us like something too heavy to move, too enormous to avoid. Adriel and my daughter shared the same father, I whispered. Ramona nodded slowly, painfully. Elias Varon created futures he never cared to protect. He carried brilliance in one hand and destruction in the other. And we, those who loved or trusted him, paid the price. The fire crackled in the parlor. The only sound in the room. Mara remained still, her arms locked, as if waiting for the inevitable collapse. When I discovered the truth, Ramona continued, it was years after Adriel died. And by the time I traced his research files, the ones he handled off record, I found connections I never expected. She paused. I found your name, Helena. A tremor ran through me. My throat tightened. But you never came. You never reached out. Her face folded with grief. Because I was ashamed. I blamed myself for not seeing what Elias was doing sooner. And I believed, if I entered your life, I might only bring more pain. I swallowed hard. So you watched from a distance? Ramona nodded. Quietly, always debating whether revealing the truth would heal you or break you further. And you decided for me, I said, bitterness rising. Like Mara did. Mara stiffened. Do not equate what I did with what she did, she snapped. I turned toward her sharply. You hid options. She hid answers. And you hid consequences, Ramona added, coldly. For the first time, something like remorse flickered across Mara's face, but she concealed it quickly. I did what the system asked of me. No, Ramona responded. You did what kept your reputation intact. Mara's jaw tightened. She didn't deny it. My mind spun, the pieces rearranging into a truth I wasn't ready for. Ramona wasn't just a stranger who chose me at random. My daughter's death was woven through a web of decisions, lies, and old sins. Sins rooted in a man neither of us had truly escaped. What do you want from me now? I whispered. Understanding? Forgiveness? Connection? Ramona's eyes filled, tears glimmering but never falling. None of those. Not unless you choose them. She reached out, hesitantly, with trembling fingertips. What I want, she said softly, is the chance I never had with Adriel. Time, honesty, a bridge between us built not from secrecy, but choice. I stared at her hand, trembling, vulnerable, human. Mara stepped back, her expression unreadable. There's more, she said quietly. One last piece. Ramona asked me to withhold it until she was ready. I felt my pulse throb painfully. What piece? Ramona inhaled shakily. Not all of Elias's files were about our children. Some were about the mothers. My stomach twisted. What about the mothers? I asked. Ramona's gaze locked onto mine. Elias never knew he had 2 daughters of his own. My breath caught. 2? Ramona nodded. One was Adriel. She reached for my hand completely this time, and the other was you. The room spun, and with that truth, everything I thought I knew about myself, my daughter, and Ramona shattered, and rebuilt itself into something terrifyingly new. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. The air in the room thickened as though invisible walls had closed around us. Ramona's fingers, warm and trembling, remained wrapped around mine while I stared at her, unable to form a single coherent thought. I'm your daughter? I whispered. Ramona nodded once, slow, steady, almost reverent. Yes, Helena, you are my child. My pulse pounded in my ears. But my mother, she never said anything. She told me my father disappeared before I was born. She never mentioned you. Ramona's expression softened with aching tenderness. She didn't know. Elias kept his relationships separate. He gave me a false name, told me he was single, traveling. I never knew about her pregnancy, and she never knew about mine. Her voice cracked. He stole choices from all of us. I shook my head, tears welling. So I went through life believing I came from nothing, that there was nothing behind me, that my daughter's death was random. But all this time, Ramona whispered, You were part of me. Mara stepped back, quietly adjusting the cuff of her sleeve. The first sign she felt she no longer belonged in this moment. I only confirmed the genetic match, she said. Ramona reached her own conclusions. And she has lived with them longer than you imagine. I turned to Ramona, searching her face. Why didn't you come for me? Why wait until now? Her voice grew thin. Because I was afraid. I failed, Adrielle. I failed to protect you before you even knew I existed. And by the time I pieced the truth together, you were grieving your child. I couldn't bring myself to reopen wounds that were still bleeding. But you approached me yesterday, I said softly, outside the hospital. Her eyes glistened, because I thought you were about to disappear again. And I didn't want to lose you a second time. A tear slipped down my cheek. Mara cleared her throat. My part here is done, she said. But Helena, whatever you do with this truth, let it be yours, not the hospital's, not Elias's. She paused. And if you wish to file a formal review of the case, I will not oppose it. Ramona's hand tightened on mine. Go, she murmured. Let Helena breathe. Mara exited silently, leaving the two of us in the warm glow of the firelight. Ramona turned toward me fully. Helena, I never expected forgiveness. I only hoped for a chance to show you the love I never got to give. I looked at her, really looked, and saw not a stranger, not a benefactor, not the elegant woman in a mansion, but a mother who had carried quiet grief for decades. I don't know if I'm ready, I whispered. You don't have to be, Ramona said. Just promise me one thing. What? She smiled, a small, tired, beautiful smile. Don't disappear. Stay. Let's learn who we are together. I took a long, trembling breath. I won't disappear, I said. Not this time. Ramona leaned her head gently on my shoulder, her voice soft as a fading heartbeat. Then I can leave this world in peace. And for the first time in years, maybe in my whole life, I felt something settle inside me. Not closure, not certainty, but belonging. A beginning born from endings, woven through loss and rediscovery. A mother found, and a daughter finally home.